even now when I think about it, I'm a little emotional about it because it's something that I've had in my heart, in my head, since I was 4 years old.
There were some that thought I made it up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring up some folks.
In the summer of 1969, 4-year-old Musa Jackson and 19-year-old Daryl Lewis attended a music festival.
There was a large crowd gathered in Harlem this afternoon. For some of the reaction there, correspondent Bill Plant.
There are 40,000, perhaps 50,000 people at Mount Morris Park in Harlem.
It really was like a sea of people.
They weren't at that other music festival in upstate New York.
I didn't see Woodstock. My parents would not let me go.
Do it.
It said Woodstock defined a generation.
Going uptown too hard.
But that summer's Harlem Cultural Festival.
When I found out yesterday, don't you know that I heard it through the...
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 60 Minutes in Black USA. Today, we're going to focus on arts and entertainment in the Black community. I have an icon in arts and entertainment and producer of his own magazine, publisher and producer of his own magazine, and is renowned or known as the ambassador of Harlem. And I'm going to bring him to you in a couple of minutes, but just a couple of minor points. If you have any questions for our guest Musa or for me, please enter them in the chat. Please ensure that you like our show on Facebook or YouTube. And let me bring our special guest into the studio now. Musa, what's up, Musa?
Hey, what's up? How you doing, Mike?
I am doing fantastic, man. Musa, I have come to admire you, man, over the course of the past few months. I've studied you immensely. Phenomenal story, man. And, you know, one thing that captured me that I want you to give our audience a sense of who you are was what you said about your upbringing, man. And then we're going to delve a bit more into that Soul Fest, which was popular back in the 60s at Walter Cronkite. That was Walter Cronkite that was mentioning Soul Fest back then. And you were featured as someone that was commenting on how important it was to you. But tell us a bit about your upbringing and who Musa Jackson is, man.
Wow. So I'm Musa Jackson, and I was born and raised in Harlem, specifically East Harlem or Spanish Harlem. And I was raised by a single parent. My mother, I'm blessed to have a beautiful mother. She's with us, and she raised 5 children in the projects of East Harlem. And she is a woman who just saw the best in her children. And so at a very young age, really around the time of Summer Soul, I was tested, I believe, and had an extremely high IQ. And so I was given an opportunity to go to one of the best private schools in New York City, possibly the country, but specifically New York City, called Allen Stevenson, which I did. And there was very few Blacks at that time. It's more common today, but in 1969 and 70, realizing that 5 years prior, we just integrated public schools, just 5 years, public schools. So now the private school sector was, didn't have to integrate it at all because the private was starting to feel the heat of the movement of, needing to not look like they're racist, I guess. And so they looked into the Black community. And that time in New York City, the Black community was Harlem. So they went to Harlem, tested kids, and of Harlem, I believe, well, you know what? I don't believe. I was the only Black kid from Harlem that made it into the school.
Hey,
So,
Musa, let's go back. Let's go back for a second, man, because you know something that you said was compelling. You were raised by a mom who raised 5 kids, and you know many of us, because I'm identifying with you, were raised by moms. You know, I didn't really interact or know my father. What did that have? Did that have any connotation on you, positively or negatively? And what became your male role model, you know, from an earlier age? Can you give us a sense of that?
well, I mean, you know, I was raised with 5 brothers and sisters. So, you know, we always had someone that we were going to play with. So we always had it like, you know, most starting groups are 5. So we had our 5 and we played amongst each other. In terms of male role models, you know, the male role models were people, you know, in the neighborhood. You know, at that time in Harlem, there were a lot of fathers who, my next door neighbor, the other neighbor on my floor, were both married to the women that they had children with, and they played that role. It was not a big, back in those days, the males would see boys like me, my brother, my younger brother, and essentially just, you know, they took their kids fishing, you coming with us. They'd ask my mother, and my mother would say, of course, because, you know, they came from a different era. And that era was unity. That era was, you know, they weren't too far, you know, they were, what is it, 3rd generations from slavery. And so, you know, we're talking about, you know, people who were used to being together, used to banding together. You didn't have sugar? Go next door. She got sugar. What you need, girl? Let me pick that up for you. Send your kids to the store for things. Neighbors needed you to run here, run errands for you. Not a big deal. So we grew up, the family, the father figures. You know, for me, I was very blessed to have many uncles, some blood, some not. And they were fabulous. They were wonderful. You know, a very different breed than today. They were very selfless. I'll say that again.
Yeah, that's
the key here, guys.
They were selfless. They were selfless.
They were sacrificing and selfless.
Yeah, that is amazing and compelling.
That's the ingredient.
Yeah, absolutely. I had that same experience that you had, but you know, the profound effect to me came, Musa, as I begun to transition, and because I want to understand how influential those earlier years were on your ultimate traveling the world, interacting with various people from billionaires to drug dealers, etc., how that influenced you. I know that for me, the transition from a teenager to a young man and having to look back for a role model of a male father figure, you know, I recall that, and I recall how I felt. So how did that upbringing influence you later on in life, man?
Well, you know, first of all, I have, but I, you know, and I, you know, have and had at the time an older brother, 8 years older, which if you could think, that's a big jump. So he also played sort of a father figure role to me, even though he was my big brother. And then his friends were even a little bit older than him. You know what I mean? So, you know, when you're 5, a 14-year-old is a grown-up. You know what I mean? It's hard for you to imagine that now because you're looking at it from a different perspective. But everybody larger, like my sister, Phyllis Laney, you know, is my oldest sister, and she's only 4 years old, but they were my big sister. You know what I mean? Which now it's like, gosh, we're only 3 years apart, you know? But they played a huge role because back then, even children or young people had responsibility. My parent had a responsibility at a very early age that was given to the children. So if you were older, everything went down the line. My older brother was on top. I was on top. I was over my younger brother. I'm the second to youngest. He followed me. And it was like a succession. And how did that play out? My mom, you know, another thing about my mom was that she exposed her children to culture, the arts, and other communities. So me going to private school and then then on the weekends being up in Harlem at the cookout. So here I am on Park Avenue after school with some of the wealthiest people in the world. Private jets, the whole nine. Okay, Puffy and Jay ain't got nothing on them. They were doing this when they were embryos. Okay, and so Rockefellers. He named the company Rockefeller. Well, I knew the Rockefellers. You get where I'm going? So the original archetypes. So I grew up with that, but then I also on the weekends, right, was up, uptown at the cookouts and kids running around and aunties and uncles. So it was always a balance. And there were uncles there. There were fathers there. We all listened. This is the day and age where kids didn't talk back. These are the day and age where kids listened to their parents, where they were the law. Doesn't exist so much today. We all know that. Okay, this is Black in America, and I don't care where you are in America. Okay, I don't care if you're in projects or if you're in the suburbs. Okay, we're living in a different age where when anybody of a certain age, you didn't even curse. How many parents can say their kids don't curse? How about that? We didn't even, that was unheard of. You cursed around your family was like, you looked at that person like he murdered somebody. And they looked at you like you murdered somebody. That's how disciplined and culture and how much respect was given to our culture and community and how adults were revered. Because, and how grandparents were the king of the throne. They didn't do anything. They sat in their rocking chair. You got them a plate of food. You listened at their feet. Okay. And they, that was the position that every single person eventually rose to, was being the head. And so the head, the matriarch, was always the grandparent, was always the grandfather, not your mother, not your father. They looked up to somebody and they looked up to them. They revered them. You never talk. So those kind of ideologies and principles coupled with these other cultures, which I was exposed to, made me very suited for the road ahead.
Wow, and the road ahead for you has been remarkable. Matter of fact, I'm already going to invite you back because we can't cover it all to what you've done and the education that you can give us to the arts and entertainment. And you said the other day, you said a guy like you that comes from the pissy poor projects, that's how you described it, right? With the basis of family that you had, because your circumstances didn't necessarily develop you and your siblings and your mom because you were what you were. Because like you said, your mom gave you culture, she gave you arts, a good private education. And all of a sudden, here it is, a couple of decades later, you're described as the ambassador of Harlem from all over the world. What is that about? The ambassador of Harlem, and how do you describe yourself? How did people describe yourself to claim you the ambassador of Harlem?
So let me be clear, and it was many decades after that. So I'm talking about this sort of moniker happened in the mid 2000s, somewhere around 2010-ish. It just started happening right after gentrification of Harlem and us really needing to having our culture, the true Harlemites, really having to keep hold of this important culture that is worldwide. And one of the things about Harlem is you don't give yourself a title. Harlem people have to give it to you. So people say, I don't call myself, I might put hashtag Harlem Ambassador and I might say Harlem Ambassador. And that took a lot of pounding into me because I was called that so often. I was the person that when the Consulate Generals of Africa arrived in Harlem, and I mean their versions of presidents and governors, right? As a counselor general, so of Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, my God, there was like 10 of them. I was named the Harlem ambassador for them. So when I go to Africa, that's how I'm recognized as the ambassador, because I was the type of person in the neighborhood who was doing all this community stuff. I was, had an events production. I have an events production company, and I was doing signature events. And because of the type of, because of who I am as a person, they always were connected to culture. They were connected. You have fun. We be, as they say, dropping it like it's hot. But in the mix of all that, you're also being educated. You're also being immersed in culture, right? So I would do parties for the Apollo, sometimes Schaumburg, giving back free concerts in the park. And it was Uptown Magazine that finally just, and other people were saying this, and the Harlem Ambassador thing, and it's Uptown Magazine did a huge feature on me. And it was huge. Full page Fred, and they said Musa Jackson, the Harlem ambassador, and that kind of went worldwide in a way because of their brand and their following, millions of people, and it fit. It really kind of hit me, and I was like, wow! After decades of having been all over the world, doing the things that I've done, always representing Harlem, I understood it. I got it. I said, wow! I went to Paris, and I was from Harlem. So I've been doing the work of an ambassador. It just didn't know this is pre-internet. So it was like, you do it because you love it. No one can ever say, I don't love my people to a fault, or love my culture to a fault, or love Harlem to a fault. That ain't happening. Okay, I know people that'll beat you up if you even suggest that. But it came about in that way. And it was, and I'll just leave this with this. This is just going to seal the deal. Grammy Award winning, one of the great singers of all time, Freddie Jackson. I know all your viewers know who that is, who actually sang at my wedding. Okay, that's another story. Said to me, called me up and said, Musa, who he is also from Harlem, older than me, older generation, world renowned. He said, you are the Harlem ambassador. I need you to own that. I need you to play around with it. I need you to say it and own it. He said, because if you don't do it, someone that doesn't look like us, someone who's not from Harlem will. And they're here. And they're ready to take that title. The minute I thought of it, he said, the minute he said that, he was talking about white folks. Okay. The minute he said that, I straightened up. I became that supermodel. And I said, not over my dead body. And I said,
wow.
Yes. And I said, and you're not going to find a better one than me. That's for sure. Okay. Wow. And I will then decide who's next.
Wow.
I'll be old, and I'll be able to anoint that person.
Right.
Okay.
You said to me,
I will hold them off from ever even thinking about something like that.
So that's a source of pride for you.
It's a source of pride for Harlem.
You mentioned culture. You mentioned culture. You mentioned culture, and when we were conversating the other day, I said Harlem. Josephine Baker, the Apollo Theater, the immense amount of eateries. Back in the 30s and 40s, the bands, etc. And you said, well, Mike, Harlem is everywhere. So when you talk about culture, Harlem is New Orleans and Baltimore, etc. Everyone has a Harlem, but when we were looking at old adage, old film, and looking at Black history and culture, Harlem was always the place where you saw a lot going on at. Mm-hmm. What is culture and its relevancy to our community as Black people, Black American? How do you describe culture?
I mean, culture is identifies us as a unit, as a people. It's how we move in the world. It's where we come from. It's how, it's the food we eat. It's the music we listen to. It's the stories that have been passed down generation after generation, you know, and that's where, you know, in Harlem, because so many different groups came here, they migrated during the Great Migration, which became the Renaissance, right? They brought all of their magic, their gifts of writing, of song, of art, of literature, of science, of math, of all those things. They came and they brought it to Harlem because New York City was the foundation, right? So if New York City is the the Mecca of the world, let's say, right? Then Harlem is the soul of the world. If that is true, then that also is true. And so no other community, and I know like people having from Chicago and people from Brooklyn, and I know they're listening. I know Oakland's, and they kind of, and everybody's like this. Let's be clear, y'all. I love all of y'all with a passion, right? But Michael, the Jackson 5, Aretha, they were all at the Apollo, all right, which is in Harlem. They all had to make it here first. All of the greats. So not just Langston, which you heard of in Oakland and Brooklyn, right? Not just Zora, not just James Baldwin, the greatest writer. That's bar none. The greatest of us all, Malcolm X. Where did he make it at, y'all? How about that? All right. So yeah, I'm doing this to y'all, but you got to come hard, and don't give me rap. Don't do that, because now you limited yourself. Remember, jazz birthed rap. So y'all want to go there? I just went there. But just know your facts. This is where we from. That's why I say Harlem is in Detroit. That's why I have to give it to y'all. Harlem is in Oakland. Harlem is in the Bronx. It's a mindset. All right? Let's drop some wisdom. I just dropped some gems on y'all. Now I went a little Harlem on you. All right? So it's all these places because you came. Marcus Garvey. These are the greatest icons ever. Period. Came where? Where did he come, y'all? Harlem. But where did he come from? Jamaica. Understand now? So instead of division, this Harlem is like Africa, the pyramids. It's like a place where there's this magic here. When people come here, it's another. That's why if I go to Ethiopia, they might not know what Chicago is, but they know what Harlem is. They might not know what, Brooklyn is in Vietnam, but they know what Harlem is. Harlem is the most famous neighborhood in the world. I said that.
So let's go somewhere else.
Black neighborhood in the world.
So let's take it somewhere else. Let's take it to Musa's career that has taken him to Paris, and Musa was the first Black male model for The Gap and has been on GQ. So from the pissy poor private school relative neighborhood, mom who reared 5 siblings or 5 children, including you.
Right.
Take us throughout your life the past couple of decades and what got you there, man. It sounds like a lot of determination, maybe some connections, but tell us how you got there.
I'll be honest with you. I had a certain look of an era, and I was in the right place at the right time. I happened to be in a space. I was a Black face, one of the few Black faces in a specific space. So I was already stood out, and I had a specific look. I was told I had $1 million smile and eyes that lit up. I'm 6'1.5". At the time I was a 29 waist. So everything in a 40 jacket. So everything, that's the perfect model look. And everything just draped on me. And that's, any designer knows what I'm talking about. If you're in fashion, it's the ultimate model. That's what Naomi, you put it on, it drapes. It just falls like a hanger. You're an actual hanger. And not that I was skinny, but it was more like I had stature. And because of where I was brought up, I had regalness for a young person. That was not like a normal teenager. I was 18 years old when I was discovered by GQ magazine, which is unheard of. First off, they don't discover anybody anymore. So don't go out there thinking GQ is going to discover you. Just, they don't. But those were the days when you were discovered. So you always hear about, that's a much older picture, but that's me recently. But GQ doesn't, they discovered, you know, a lot of models back in that day, you know, like most of you ever hear about these stories about models being discovered in the cornfield. A mom was discovered, you know, in Africa. I was discovered downtown by the editor of GQ magazine. And I was in a club full of celebrities and they were like, who is that? And I didn't know what that was. I was a student at, someone said, are you not family with Jacksonville? Yes, I am. And I hope I'm part of Jackson family. And not, if you know Michael, no. But I was downtown. It was 1983. Black male models had only been in the game successfully since the early 70s. And the first Black American, who actually just called me today, ironically, Ronald White, would do GQ magazine cover in 1979. So literally 4 years after we really broke the barrier, I came along. So I'm a pioneer and trailblazer of the modeling industry because I came in through the front door. I didn't know that. And at the time I just rode with it, but I had what they were looking for: articulate, a good look. I could sell product. And I was also very young. When I debuted, they were looking for someone with upper middle class breeding, or if you will, a carriage, because the Cosby Show had just debuted. And so the Cosby Show had showed another side of life that had never been shown before. A Black family, upper middle class Black family with two parents, both professionals, and the kids went to sort of private school environments. They were like, you know, it seems very normal today, but at the time it was groundbreaking. It had never happened on TV in history. Never. Okay, this is a fact. And it was the highest rated show of the time. So this was 1983, 84. So the magazines only reflected what was being shown on TV. At the same time, it was the Brat Pack had taken over. We had the Brat Pack of the 60s with Frank Sinatra and all those older gentlemen. And now they had the Rat Pack. So it was a youthful movement going on. So how did that look if you were a Black person? It looked like me. And it looked like it, and I wasn't a thug. I was someone who was relatable, who there, you know, I was what they called, I was crossover, mainstream looking, but there was a word for it that they had. I'll just say crossover, because everything I did crossed over or was a part of the mainstream. So I did Vogue magazine, I did GQ, I did New York Fashion Times, I did mostly my jobs, Macy's on the cover, JCPenney's, I did 30 commercials. So at the time it was like, these are the top jobs. And they were, you know, I was booking a lot of those jobs for my age group or for my look. And I just kind of helped cement that look. So now young people that look like me would be considered valuable. Also at the same time that was going on in 1984, 85 was the birth of crack in my neighborhood and AIDS. And also the beginning really of killing young Black men. Michael Stewart, Yusuf Hawkins, the Central Park Five came a little bit later, right? So here I am, and they would say things on the news, 1 in 4 Black men, and they would always show a picture of a Black kid, and he's got a mug shot, and this is how they represent it. And then you had people like me. So I knew in my heart, and I came from Harlem. I came from exactly where they thought I came from, the suburbs in Connecticut, because that's the way I looked and how I spoke. But I never denied that I came from a single mom in the projects, and that this could come out of that. Excellence.
You know what? What's
out
important?
of that.
You know,
in this day and age. That's
absolutely. And what's compelling in my conversations with you is that you never had lost the identity of where you come from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it shows because that's where you are.
Right.
That's where you are. Do you consider yourself a role model for Black young people? And if so, what message do you pass on to them relevant to your own life and how you mapped out your own course for what they need to do?
That's a good one. I've mentored many young people, some very successful, and as a matter of fact, I won't name their names, but everyone watching knows exactly who they are. I've been fortunate to help quite a few people who are now successful become either successful models, successful business people, and let's just say they know I can listen. I was mentored by one of my mentors was Lena Horne. You know what I mean? So the name drop for me is pointless. I knew Mike. I met Michael. I met Michael when he was dark skinned. I met him when he was white. Okay, so I've had quite a life, and so with that said, I just but I'm still the guy from the hood. I'm still the guy from the neighborhood. I'm the guy who walks down the street. I just want young people to be respectful, to follow their own direction, be there, and maybe they might look at my life and look at things that I've done and said, okay, I could do that. He went to Whole Foods, or he went to Key Food, or he went to 125th Street, just like I did. I saw him in CVS. And he's not disconnected or far reaching, that something like his life or what he's done is not accessible to me, because I'm right here. I am right now in Harlem. But yet what's key is that when they see me on the street, right, I'm stopped every 5 seconds by people saying, I love you, Musa, this and that, or hi, how you doing? Can I take a picture, whatever, because you have to have love for self. You have to have love for other people. You have to know where you want to go. And that's just being me, right? When you say role model, inspiration is totally fine. I think sometimes a role model, you get I want people to be their best selves and you can never be me. I said that again. You can never be me. That's my job, is to be me. But my job is to look at you and go, I can't wait to really see the best you. And I'm watching you. And they have that aha moment right away. And I say, now there's things that I did that might help you, and these are key ingredients. Have self-respect, respect for others, know what you want, listen to your mama if your mom is a good mama. Because most of the time, mamas, they know what they're talking about, and they have your best interest at heart if they're a good mama, right?
What about
daddy too?
What about a good daddy? What about a good daddy?
Mothers and fathers. I just use as an example. It's because mothers mostly are the home, and daddies too. Their advice as well. That's why I threw that in. I think I'm a decent father. I've given my daughter, my son, good advice. But what I mean is, and that was just me, expressing that. But most I'm an elder, a good elder, right? So let's not even put the mama and the daddy, but an elder, someone older with wisdom, who and you could see them as a role model. but you know, which is totally fine. I just want you to because what happens with role models is you sometimes put role models up on this pedestal. And you know, one thing my mom taught me when someone was talking about Malcolm X one time, and she said, you know, in her voice, she goes, you know, that's why she talks. My sister's probably laughing, you know, well, Malcolm was you know, he's a father. He's a person once. And I stopped and I went, you know, he's fallible. We put the icons and the models up on this thing, and when they don't fall here, then everything, whatever. But if we can just erase that and start looking at ourselves, take valuable things from Malcolm, take valuable things from Martin, take valuable things from these people that you revere or that you admire, and bring them into your own world. Whether it's your father, I say to my children, I said, listen, you know, I apologize to my children when I make a mistake, all right? I apologize to everybody, but I apologize to my kids. Always. They say, Dad, you did something. A lot of parents, they're up here and they're never wrong. And I say, oh, I'm wrong. I've been wrong. And right now I'm apologizing. I just learned something and I'm grateful to you. I know you're 7. I know you're 8. They're older now, but you get my following me. I said, I learned something from you too. From me, Dad? And I'm like, yes, from you.
Musa, let me
and that's the wisdom. That's just wisdom talking. That's not even me talking.
Absolutely. Let me ask you another question, because I want to transition for a minute into Soul Fest that originated from Harlem. Cool. I showed the clip at the beginning. Then we got to talk about your magazine, man. We got to give people the opportunity, free subscription, world-class magazine. So we want to talk about that to a degree. But here's a question for you. How do you measure Musa's success to this point in life? Is it a materialistic measurement? Is it self-fulfillment of goals? How does Musa judge Musa's success and fulfillment to this point in life? How do you measure yourself?
I'm successful because I woke up today.
So has that moved a bit? Has that moved a bit from 20 years ago when you may have measured it from the thousands or tens of thousands or number of jobs to now you're a little bit more older and wiser? How did you measure it back then?
I never measured it. I've been told to measure it now, and I just started measuring it because I'm living in an age where I'm 56 years old. And I become this, I'm definitely a legend of Harlem. That's just a given. And done all these things. And so I'm on the walls, in the movie, on, you know, all these programs. So of course I have to measure it because I'm being reminded that I did these things. When I did The Gap, I didn't know I was the first. I did my job. I showed up. When they, you know, going out, I was mannerable, even in a nightclub to a certain degree. Yeah, I was a kid having fun and joking and all that good stuff. You know, kids are different today, right? But that's how it was. I was dancing my butt off, and then I got discovered by GQ, and they were like, my mom taught me to be on time. Because if I wasn't on time, guys, for all those jobs, I wouldn't have had a career. But I was on time because of my mom. I knew guys that were modeling and they were late for jobs. Well, now they're a footnote in history. They had the opportunity. They squandered it. I didn't. I was like, oh my God, I got to get up tomorrow. I got to get there and I got to look pretty decent. You know, thank God at that time, I mean, wash your face and, you know, and just smile. And that was enough. Eye drops, you know, and it was enough, but I showed up.
Just the basics and soft and social skills, just the basic mannerisms, you know, and that look got you where you are. So let's talk about
it was a succession. And then it's a succession of things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Soul Fest for about 5 or 6 minutes before we wrap up with that magazine, that powerful magazine that you publish now. Soul Fest, as we showed at the top of the hour, was before Woodstock. And then all of a sudden, people were saying things like, relative to Soul Fest, that the revolution would not be televised, right? Because of the amount of Black people that participated in Soul Fest, if that's what it was called back in 1969. You were 4 years old, right? What's the relevancy of what happened in Harlem in '69 with Soul Fest and it manifesting into a movie? And I'm going to show a bit of a clip from that in a bit. But in your life, how important was that Soul Fest?
So it's called the Harlem Cultural Festival. That is the appropriate title of that, what we attended. The movie is called Summer of Soul. So when people, not Soul Fest, so Summer of Soul. So people might think they're looking for Soul, but it's Summer of Soul on Hulu. So I'll say that the importance of that moment was in 1969. It was a year after the assassination of one of our greatest leaders, Martin Luther King. And the cities around the nation were erupting. They were rioting. Summertime is when they riot. Okay? That's when things get hot. So it gets hotter in the summer. So one of the things that they were trying to do was squelch that situation because obviously the prior year, they had a few riots. Anyway, okay, we can't have this happen. We can't lose New York City, the foundation. And we can't. So Harlem being Black capital, they're going to go the hell off. So they came up with this concert, and Tony Lawrence, the great Tony Lawrence promoter, got all this together and got all these people together to perform for free. No, excuse me. Well, it was a free concert that you attended. He had to pay some of these people, obviously, but he got them to perform. And it was 6 weeks throughout the course of the summer, every weekend. It was 6 weeks leading up to August, from June to August, and families went. And most of the time, it was about 50,000 people showed up at Marcus Garvey Park. It doesn't look the way that if you went to Marcus Garvey, Mount Morris Park, which is the same thing, they renamed it. It was actually Mount Morris Park. It's been renamed Marcus Garvey Park. If you went there now, you'd see it. It's developed. They have a huge amphitheater. It didn't exist back then. Okay. And that's why it was like just land. And that's why in mountains. And that's why people were able to come and be there together. But it was beautiful because you had families that were now uniting for a purpose with their favorite entertainers, from Nina Simone to the Fifth Dimension, to Stevie Wonder, to Gladys Knight and the Pips, to David Ruffin, to you had Reverend Jesse Jackson, mayor, the great mayor who my mother adored. Lindsay was a great mayor, white. He was actually Republican, a liberal Republican, but he loved Black people. We call him Blue-Eyed. So he had Blue-Eyed Soul, and he came and it sort of ordained it. And it was filmed by Hal Tolchin, filmed this. And so he filmed it because he felt that he could film this situation and then possibly profit, white man possibly profit and put it on the networks. But they didn't want it. They didn't want it. They didn't want to show Black people. See, everything else they had shown on TV in the 60s, if you go back, you think about the 60s, it's dogs being sicked on and hosed and marching and violence and, always under attack, right? But here, when you see the movie, which people get to a window into my world, how I came up. When I always talked about Harlem, I would always say, oh no, it was families and it was people, they loved each other, and I had plenty of mamas and daddies. Well, I got a receipt. It's the Summer Soul. Finally, you get to see that in all of its glory. And that's why it's so important now, because now, I think if you had seen it back in those days, I know God had a plan for this movie and its time and myself. Everything about this movie is totally spiritual.
Musa, what I want to
right down to me being picked.
I want to play a little clip for our viewers of this so they get a sense of the importance of this. And as you mentioned, the fact that they did it because they were afraid back then Black people would riot after Martin Luther King, etc. But let's play a clip of this, man, and give them a sense of the importance of what this is. And this is not copyrighted.
As soon as you move down, we can start. Welcome to the Harlem Culture Festival here in the Harlem.
What time is it? You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Yeah, there you have it. It's emotional for me. It's very emotional. That's my very first memory in life is that moment that I've held in my head for 52 years. And it's now being honored in a film where they basically go through my brain. That's why it opens and that's why it ends with me. Because of my incredible memory, I have a photographic memory of a 4-year-old. So I always tell families, I always look at the kids. Kids love me. Babies to kids to older people love the hell out of me. I can't walk down the street. And I think it's because of that child. And that child having an active imagination that was set off in 1969.
Wow.
With that movie, with that moment. And they found me. Of the thousands of people, 3,000 people they interviewed, 3,000 people were interviewed, 12 people were selected, and only 5 made it into the film. And of the 5, a 4-year-old was given the highest honor, and that's me.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. And when you look at the release of that film this year, you know, after Freddie Gray, comparative to '69, you know, after the riots, etc., you know, it's compelling when you look at arts and entertainment, the importance, but it was downplayed that year in '69 to what Woodstock did, you know, to the whites. But, you know, at least it's being acknowledged and honored now. And it was so wonderful to see you a part of that, for them to be able to go back in history and to quote you and ask you your thoughts and your opinion. Hey, we got 12 minutes left.
We got 12 minutes. Okay,
and you know what's important to me is to talk about the digital magazine ambassador. Now, I know you didn't name it because you're the ambassador of Harlem, but ambassador. Tell us about the ambassador digital magazine.
Well, okay, so I'm called the Harlem Ambassador. I worked in magazines. I was producing many photo shoots for different publications. I produced photo shoots. So these producers are people who are behind the scenes, and they sometimes put things together. They're one of the producers. And so I I've done things for Essence, Spirit and Flesh, Japanese, international magazines. And in 2019, I had a vision, and I said, I'm going to do a magazine called Ambassador. It's playing off my name, but here's the catch. I'm not Oprah Winfrey. I'm not going to have myself on the cover. I've never been on the cover. I always felt everybody's an ambassador of something. Everybody. So everybody, if you're listening, you're an ambassador of something. Might be an ambassador of just your family.
It is a well done magazine, and you even had, everyone was very heartfelt when Michael K. Williams passed. And obviously you were good friends with Michael K. Williams, and you featured him before he passed, right? On the cover of your magazine, right? Tell us a bit about that. How did that transpire?
Well, Michael was a very good friend of mine. Everybody loves Michael, and he, you know, certain people he just loves beyond. So I'm one of those people. You know, I loved and adored him. He's an incredible human being. And of course, this magazine was birthed. People may not know this. I launched this magazine in a pandemic. I launched it in May of 2020 in the heart of a pandemic. And it basically went viral. And so by the time by January, the first New Year's Eve call or New Year's Day call I got was from Michael K. Williams. And he said, Musa, I love Ambassador. And I'm so proud of you. And I want to be the first cover of the new year. Well, what do you think I said? There you're looking at it, and there's others, but other pictures. And so Michael did it. And and here's the irony is the magazine was always about giving people their flowers while they're alive. That's one of the hallmarks of Ambassador Digital Magazine, which is different than most magazines. You know, you look at most magazines, Vogue, and it's about the youth, who's hot, who's trending. And to me, being in the middle, right, meaning I'm not quite elder, and I'm not young, I'm in the middle. I see the young people because I can shake it, you know, so I see what's happening, and then I see the old people I see who have relevancy, right? And so I said, let's give them their flowers, which I've been able to do. And Michael was one of them. And our cover, ironically, would be his last cover feature he ever did. So it's a magical magazine. Let's just go there. I let it lead me. I let it lead me. I show up with all that God has given me, right? And then I allow the magic to happen. This is magical. This is our first LA cover. You guys understand the magnitude of that? I'm in Harlem in a pandemic, and I have a creative team in Los Angeles doing that. I was getting calls from the very people that I worked for, the Essences, the creative teams behind those magazines that put those would call me and say, oh my God, how are you doing our level in a pandemic? And I just say, I have a great team. I have one of the best teams. I have the best teams in LA, in Atlanta, in New York. We have our first Paris cover coming out. I'm excited about that. It's coming up soon. And what we did was we promoted it during IG. So when people were home, how are we going to launch our magazine? We launched it on YouTube and Facebook with a live component, a cover reveal. So people were excited. They were at home and waiting for the covers. And we did this, guys, every week. We did this you heard what I said, every week.
And it looks like quality. That's one thing that impressed me. It looked like quality. But, you know, Musa, tell these folks that this is a subscription. They don't pay to get this, right? They don't have to pay.
You go onto YouTube and you subscribe to our channel, Ambassador Digital Magazine. You can also follow us. It's right there in the bottom, ambassadordigitalmag.com. So you can see the magazine. And you can also go on IG, on our IG Live, ambassador_mag, and also see some of our IG Lives and things like that. And you'll be seeing more of us in the press because we're, you know, a lot of different celebrities are on the way. I didn't want to go, you know, I didn't want to go too hard and bring out the big guns because we were still in a pandemic. So, you know, I'm in it for the long haul. We have a coffee table book. Once a year, we put out a coffee table book, guys, with all the covers and all the little backstories and the quotes. And I've seen it, what's happening, and it's stunning. Perfect for your coffee table. Because we're a digital magazine, so we don't have can't go to the newsstand. So, you know, this is the new age. You know, funny, speaking of Oprah, she canceled the print subscription. Now it's only Oprah.com, right? So we were kind of ahead of the curve by just starting in that space and starting in this way that is accessible. That's where the young component, like, you know, my daughter's age, and then older people, you know, can feel like, oh, wait a minute, you put this person on the cover? You know, I know who that person is. And I'm like, that's where we cross over into all these generations, because I don't want to leave people out. And another thing about us is we're about our magazine is that we put men and women, we don't care about your age, race, sex, sexual identity. We put a trans man on the cover, a trans woman on the cover. My friend, beautiful woman, Rebecca Moses, she's Jewish. Another woman, Korean woman, who's Jung Lee. So you probably say it's Black. No, I'm about Blacks, people of color, and our allies. I feel, and we're living in an age, I learned that as a child. Okay, we're going to need everybody's hands on deck. And if you're coming to me and you show me love, my mother says, oh, I love them if they love me. That's how I was raised. But of course, I'm always going to be for my people. So when you look at the magazine, you're always going to see us first. So now we're the stars and you're a co-star.
Man, that is fantastic. That is absolutely phenomenal. Hey, Musa, we're down to 3 minutes.
Okay.
And, you know, you're going to have much of that. Just save me 30 seconds.
Okay.
But let me ask you one final question, and then you can just kind of give your fireside thoughts to our viewers in terms of what you think.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that is your hope for this world as it exists in 2021? What is your hope for the world today?
That this world really takes a deep look at themselves and sees and understands that we have to come back to our humanity. And humanity is not one race over another race. It's actually us really trying to find common ground and make this a better place for all of our children, or else we're going to destroy it. We're going to destroy it through so many different things because we're trying to control this person or control this piece of land. But how about if we look at ourselves and we say, how can we just come together and make this a beautiful planet? You know what I'm saying? Why can't we all live as equals? Why do I have to even have a voting rights initiative? Shouldn't I just have it, right? Period, because I'm breathed. So my thing is, in a nutshell, it's just us as a people, the human race coming together and loving one another. My magazine is Live Your Life with Passion. With passion is love.
That is fantastic. Well, Musa, thank you so much for appearing. I want to invite you back in a few weeks. I know I'm coming up there to Harlem, so you can take me around. We didn't even get to the clips of the eateries that had you.
We'll do that next time.
People, we'll do that next time.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, thank you so much for sharing with us your life, your story, phenomenal, and you shared it with a passion and a proudness that we all should feel about where we've been and what we've done in our life. So Mike Haney again, 60 Minutes on Black USA every Sunday, 6 p.m. Please don't forget every Monday through Friday at 10, the Black USA News Show with Donnie Glover, our publisher and founder, phenomenal human being, as well as Sister Biz on Tuesdays, Chap and Quid on Mondays. We also have Black Business Roundtable on Thursday and Crypto on Friday, and the Blackout from Harlem as well with Tasmir. Thanks again for joining in. We'll see you next week where we'll resume our series on education and the disinclusion of Blacks in corporate America. Good night. Thanks again, Musa.
Thank you.